All right, we are at the top of the hour. We have some folks still coming in, but we are going to get started. Welcome, everyone. You are in the right place for boundary setting at the workplace, presented to you by PAVE Prevention. We could have the next slide. So just a little bit of housekeeping. If you don't mind, please mute your self as we get started. And then in the chat, please share where you're joining us from. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat. We'll have some folks monitoring that. And then, yes, once again, please mute yourself during the presentation. Oh, I'm seeing some great places: Utah, Cedar Rapids, Newark, Streamwood, wonderful. Davis. I'm currently in Berkeley, California, but I call Chicago home. Great. Super, thank you so much. Okay, let's get started. Next slide. So as I mentioned, I am Arlene Lemus. I'm leadership for PAVE Prevention. And I like to share before any type of presentation or interactions I have with folks that I come to this work and I come to this place and I come to this webinar today with my own limitations, my own perspective of life, experience shaped by experiences and shaped by things that I haven't experienced. So I'd like to give that disclaimer that I still only see the world as I see the world. As much as I try to expand on that, that's really who I am and who I'm coming to you as today. Please don't forget to mute yourself. And next slide. And who are we? Who are we? We are PAVE Prevention. We are a social enterprise, and we really are tasked to create safer and more productive around, when I say productive, I mean productive around everything: our psychological safety, our emotional safety, and literal productivity. But we want to help people ward off violence. So not sure what was heard on that, but in a nutshell, we really aim to give people the tools and the skills to prevent violence from happening and all those indicators leading up to something, to prevent them, to recognize them, and ward them off, to, in real time, if they are forced to, deal with violent events or incidents or escalating events, and then also to respond to in real time, but then to heal from. And I think that's a part of our training that it's unexpected because we're all influenced by violent events or aggressive events, activating events, escalating events every day. So hoping to heal from those things as well. Okay. Can you all hear me now? Yes, thank you, Jason. Next slide, please. So this is what to expect today. We already touched upon our welcome. A pillar of the PAVE training is what we call a spectrum of awareness. It can also be used as a spectrum of awareness and response. So the package there, we're going to touch upon boundary setting, which is the heart of this training today. Why boundary setting is important. I will share my argument that boundary setting and de-escalation and grounding and adaptive strategies all have to work together in order to have them be successful. So boundary setting just isn't a standalone tool. And then we'll take some Q&A and check out of the training. So thank you so much. Just a little something for you to share in your chat. What might you gain or lose by setting boundaries with someone in your life whose behavior makes you uncomfortable? And this can be personally reflective and you don't share it with us, or if you feel like it, you can share it in the chat. But it's just something that I want to challenge you to think about when it comes to boundary setting. Next slide. So, what is happening around boundary setting in the world of work? Um, these are just some stats. This is not new information, I don't think, to most of us. But 60% of US workers report having no clear boundaries between their professional responsibilities and their personal lives. We're expected really to stay on all the time, right? While 71% of our employers believe they provide adequate mental health, de escalation, and boundary support for frontline staff, only 27% of the people who they believe have been given these skills agree with that assessment. And 51% of voluntary staff turnover is linked directly to poor managerial boundaries. So boundaries are super important to the organizational health, but it's also, of course, as we know, important to the individual health. Next slide. So what are some of the consequences when boundaries are not clear? 54% of workplace conflict is driven by perceived differences in work ethics or tasks being pushed onto others. And so how do we tie this statistic into boundary setting? Is because if we're not setting boundaries and tasks are being pushed onto our plate or removed off our plate or whatever those, asking us to stay later, come in earlier, take on projects. So if we're not able to set those boundaries and share really where we're at, where we're feeling, what our space is, then this is what is occurring. This bubbles up. Next. So if some of you, and I think I recognize some of the names, were on our first webinar around de-escalation. This is our spectrum of awareness and response. It is a pillar of our training. It is a quick, easy, shorthand, shared language around where we are, how we are feeling, how we are moving through our day. So if we are green, we are feeling comfortable, we are feeling at ease, we are relaxed, we are content and grounded. If we're moving from green to yellow, maybe some feelings of being slighted are creeping in. So we're moving now to lime green. We're feeling uncomfortable, we're uncertain, we're feeling vulnerable or unsure. That moves us to yellow. And then if we continue to move through the spectrum of awareness and response, we may be feeling, if we're orange or red, we may be feeling angry, fearful, threatened, unsafe, trapped. These are all just some words to connect to some feelings that we may be feeling to describe where we are on the spectrum of awareness and response. So I would challenge you to think about the spectrum of awareness and response on how you are feeling every day. And it changes throughout the day. You may be in one activity during the day and you feel completely green. Then there's a deadline that you're dealing with, or an unruly customer, or someone who has lost a child in maybe one of your library branches. And now you move. You've been green all day, but now you move maybe to yellow, orange, maybe even to red. So this spectrum is not set. It's not a given, and it's flexible. You move through it daily. The idea around it is acknowledging when you are moving on this, and then being able to bring yourself back to balance, bring yourself back to a yellow, bring yourself back to a lime, bring yourself back to a green. So it's this first concept of acknowledging where you are. And we're going to touch upon why this is important for boundary setting. Okay. All right. We have attached in the chat, we are attaching a blank spectrum of awareness and response. And we encourage you to fill in those blank spaces with words that resonate for you when you're at green, that resonate for you when you're at yellow, that resonate for you when you are moved to red. Okay. Now, in addition to using the spectrum of awareness and response to acknowledge where we are at as we're moving through the day, this is also a good tool to connect with your team, with your coworkers on where they are at and how they can be supported by using this spectrum of awareness and this quick shorthand this quick shared language to communicate. It allows for a connection without a feeling like people have to overshare or that people are oversharing. So I encourage you to use the spectrum of awareness for quick check-ins with your team. In addition to that, this spectrum of awareness can also be used as an identifier for people that you are interacting with and may be escalated. So you can start developing this tool in a way that you start recognizing, wow, I think this person that I'm talking to is now moving to yellow. I may need to create some distance. I may need to move a chair in between the two of us so I have a physical boundary between us. So there are so many different ways that the spectrum of awareness can be used, cultivated, sharpened for you to use day in and day out with your interactions with yourself, with your team, with the public, and also how you identify and evaluate situations that you may have to step into. So please make this your own, print it out, add some words that resonate for you. Next slide. And so we touched upon it a little when we were discussing our spectrum of awareness, but when we are moved off of green or off of yellow, right, we cannot stay in that state. We cannot stay in that activated state. So we have to use skills that help us ground ourselves, bring ourselves back to balance. And grounding is so important. You will need to ground before you set your boundary. You will need to ground before you interact in an escalated situation. So grounding is so important pre and post events. Next slide. And so I want to ask you right now, okay, when you are experiencing a stress response, and setting a boundary can and often is quite stressful. So when you are experiencing a stress response, please respond in the chat. Where and how do you feel it in your body? Because the first and most important things is that you identify, oh, my chest is tightening. Whew, I feel some flutters in my stomach. My shoulders are tightening. So that you can go, wait a minute, let me do a little something to bring myself back to balance, bring myself from yellow down to a lime green, because I'm going to need to set a boundary here. Right? We cannot stay in that stress response state. These are some great identifiers, and good for you that you all are recognizing that this is manifesting itself physically in your body when you are activated. Great. All right, next slide. So what is boundary setting, right? And I want to say that we are intentional with our words here. You will see many things identify or use the term boundary management. For us, we don't want to manage boundaries. If we need to set a clear boundary, we need to set a boundary, right? So when we are setting boundaries empower us. They enable us to control our emotions. They protect us. I like to think when I got better at boundary setting, which entailed some no's, my yeses became much more sincere, much more doable. So the idea that this has some negative connotation, that I have to set a boundary, that I have to say no, I would challenge that and share with you that the more sincere your no's get, it also influences how sincere and how genuine your yeses are. So setting healthy boundaries, some of the steps you want to think about, okay, is you need to define first why this issue is an incident. Why is it not settling right? Why, what is going on here? Check that spectrum of awareness. define what's happening here. This is activating me. Why? Because I need something, or because I need something not to happen. So define and know your needs. Communicate what's happening, of course, with respect, but communicate those. Be deliberate, be accurate, be genuine, and communicate those concerns on that these needs are not being met, or these needs are being uh, entrenched upon, okay? Encroached upon. And then protect and defend your confidence with confidence. So when you've moved to a point where you have to set a boundary, you have to also be prepared to protect that. So sometimes we as individuals don't like to hear no. I'm sure no one in this webinar enjoys being told no, or someone can't do something that we're asking them to do. So in a respectful way, we have to be prepared to defend with confidence the boundary that we've set. Because if we're not setting it in a confident way, in an assertive way, then a lot of times those boundaries get pushed. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. But, just as I said, we don't like to hear no. So we would say, are you sure you can't do that? The people that we're setting our boundary with don't like to hear no either. And so, again, protect it, sustain it. Don't don't back up in a sense, right? And then respect others and honor their needs. So if there is a way that your boundary can be received and accepted, but there's also a way that there can be a way to find an answer to this boundary setting and boundary receiving. If we can find a way, we'll find a way. But this is not the way when you set that boundary. Thank you. Next one. And so I hope that you bear with me on this. And since we're all muted, we should feel comfortable. Hopefully you're in a little place where you can share some things. But these are some of our boundary setting statement cards. And these are really integral part of our training because although some people may move through the world like, I don't understand why people can't set a boundary. I don't understand why they just can't say what they need. Well, believe it or not, there are a lot of us that in any situation, it's difficult. So I may easily be able to set boundaries with my coworkers, but not with my family. And so it's not a given. So we've created this deck of cards, okay? And we're just going to take some time and please repeat them after me. No, I'm sorry, but I can't work late today. Great. And when you are sharing these, when you're repeating these, I want you to think about even your posture while you're sitting, because all of those are cues when you're setting a boundary and they're all important. Make sure your tone is right? So make sure it's your assertive tone. So be mindful of that while you're repeating these. Okay, here we go into the other one. When you don't do your fair share, the burden falls on me, and I'm not going to do it for you anymore. Great. Okay. Hey, I just want to let you know that that's landing on me like harassment. Great. I would have appreciated getting this assignment earlier so I could do it in a timely manner without being rushed. Great. In my opinion, the whole team should be allowed to give input on this. And the last one, that's inappropriate because we're colleagues, not friends. Okay, great. Thank you. Now, I just glanced at some of the comments that were coming in. These are not every single one of these works for me. No, maybe two or three of these work for me. The other one I might soften a little bit. The other one I may need my boundary to have been pushed a couple times before I move to this type of boundary, that I'd say this type of statement. Okay? So again, these are just some samples. We just have found that people sometimes need a real statement, a tangible statement that they can hold on to, an example that they can use as they initially start to develop this tool of boundary setting. Great. Okay, next slide, please. So when we set boundaries, especially with people that don't want to acknowledge them, they need us in such a bad way, the project is so incredibly important, the work is, whatever the situation is, there is a sense of urgency. This has got to happen right now. That's how they're feeling. The person who we are setting the boundary with, they may be feeling that way. Or maybe even it's someone who we're dealing with as a customer or as a client. Their world that day, we don't know what's going on, but it's important to them. And we are now stopping, we are setting a boundary, and it's going to be at times that it doesn't settle well. It doesn't set well with them. And it is going to be incumbent on us to be prepared to defend our boundary that we have set, but also de-escalate, because they will not receive it well. And so I want to review our de-escalation tools for the folks that had participated in our first webinar, but also to share it for the first time with some of our new participants. And so these are our tactics for de-escalating situations. Always approach with empathy, right? So always be prepared to be insightful and inquisitive about where the person we're setting this boundary that is now escalated, where they're at. What are they dealing with that day? Give them time and space. We've just set a boundary with them. We're holding firm, right? So give them time and space to process that. Validate their feelings and experiences, right? They clearly do not want to hear our boundary being set and our no. And so there may need to take some time to go, yes, I understand that this is coming at an inopportune time, but I'm still going to set my boundary, right? Don't take their response personally, right? The idea is by the end of this interaction, the goal is we're still going to hold our boundary firm. And so we're not going to take it personally as long as we hold our boundary firmly. Present yourself with an ally. So we want to be respectful that if there is something we can do for them, I can't do that for you today. It's a hard no, but maybe next Thursday I can help you with that. Or I can find someone who can help you with that. So we're still an ally, even though we're protecting ourselves or setting a boundary. All right? Provide choices. Also, as presenting ourselves as an ally, we're providing choices. Allow time for them to make decisions. We can't just like, this is my boundary, that's it, get over it, right? No, we want to give them a little time to accept that, right? They're escalated, they're activated, okay? And then remember the end goal. The end goal is that I am holding my boundary for whatever reason that is. And if this interaction, this de-escalation addition to my boundary setting allows us to walk away and my boundary is still set, then that's my end goal and I've achieved that. Thank you. Next slide, please. So now you'll notice that these boundary setting statements also include, there's some boundary setting and some de-escalation mixed into these. And so there'll be a little different feel to this. Again, as you say these aloud on your side of Zoom land, as you say these aloud to yourself, please be mindful of how you're positioning your body. Be mindful on your tone. If you were setting this boundary and sharing these de-escalation statements with someone, right? You're actively using them. You would want to make eye contact. All of those body positionings you need to be mindful of for them to be received in the way you need them to be received. Okay? All right. So let's start. I share your concern about that issue, but I don't have the time to talk about it right now. All right, next one. I agree, it's not fair for you to have to get this done all by yourself, and I promise to assign someone to help. I promise to listen to your opinion, and I'd really like to finish my thought. I'm sorry that you had to experience that at work. Would you like me to go with you to talk to them about it? I appreciate that you are upset right now. Is there anything we can do to bring you back to balance? I really want to help you access the resources you need, but right now, all I can do is show you where they are. So again, you should notice that these statements have a little different feel to them than just a boundary setting statement. Because once again, this is not just boundary setting as one tool and it always works. It's a tool that needs to be cultivated, and it's connected to these other things like grounding yourself before you set your boundary, understanding where you are at along the spectrum of awareness, and then being prepared to defend that boundary. And it may escalate, so you may need some de-escalation tools as well. Next slide. Thank you. So what I'm going to do at this point is we're going to come back to this slide, Lucia, and I would like to come off our slideshow and then just kind of check in on our chat. Great. All right. Can someone from the PAVE team share some of the chat questions or statements? All right, I'll read a few of them.
I can read them for you.
Okay, great. No, it's okay, Lou. I've got them now. I've got them pulled up now. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. De-escalation is what I prepare for when holding firm to my boundary with people. Preparing may take an additional day. Is that fair? So I think the question here, for me, especially when boundary setting was new to me, I'm a little bit of a people pleaser. And I want to keep the flow going, keep everyone happy and engaged. It took time. It took rehearsals. Let me share this with someone that I trust. How does this sound? Run through it again. And so I don't think preparing and taking additional day is unheard of. I think it's a good practice, especially as you're honing those boundary setting and de-escalation skills. What if a coworker sets a boundary that infringes into everyone else's boundaries? I think this is from Shepherd. Do you want to give us a little more information on that? Do you want to unmute and share a little more information? No? Okay. All right. I'll go to the next one. I would just need a little more information on that. But I'm not quite sure. I'm not visualizing how a coworker's boundary would infringe on mine, but okay. All right. So our next one is here. What if a supervisor or manager has built a wall and refuses to listen to reason? So they don't acknowledge your boundary is what I'm hearing, right? So, okay. So we're going to close up this and we're going to move back to that last slide so we can talk about some options on boundary setting. And this may give some insight into those questions, give some answers to those questions. And so I think sometimes we forget all the tools of boundary setting that we have, right? Thank you, Lou. It's number 17. Yes, great. Right? So all of these are boundaries at our disposal. In addition to us just, boom, setting a boundary in the moment, we have all these boundaries that boundary tools we can use. So, for example, digital and communication boundaries. We don't always have to be on, right? If we can set office hour email blackouts, or I'm not receiving calls after this time, or I don't check my emails after that time. These are boundaries that are most of the time supported by organizations. And so don't be afraid to use these. If we are public facing, we should ask for behavioral boundaries, right? So there should be patrons' codes of conduct, and they should be posted so that we can hand someone a piece of paper and say, hey, I'm sorry, you are crossing a line here, and I'm going to have to set a boundary, right? So also, we should have right to disconnect and interaction. So we should have the support, if we are public facing, of our organizations that give us the right to go, I've tried to set a boundary on numerous occasions. I'm going to end this conversation. I'm going to hang up this phone. So behavioral boundaries are important. Also, zero tolerance in reporting systems. So if something is happening and we're reporting it, it's supported with a zero tolerance policy. So these are boundaries that we can use. They fall also under our organizational boundaries, where organizational boundaries support what our roles and responsibilities are and policies and procedures. The library closes at 5 o'clock. We don't let anyone in after 4:45. That's our boundary. That's an organizational boundary. That's not my boundary. Okay? So don't be afraid to use organizational boundaries. Sometimes we move through our day like we always have to be accommodating. We always have to help the customer. We always have to help the boss. But don't be afraid to use your organizational boundaries as well. And then this one, not as many people think about, but psychological and cultural boundaries within our organization are important. And they can be little things that you don't see as being boundary setting, but having and embracing a true feedback model that everybody is on board with, that everybody understands, and it's consistent throughout your organization, that is a way of setting a nice, safe psychological and cultural boundary for your organization and your team. The other is making clear distinctions and guidance around what is venting and what is gossiping. I think everybody can benefit from a coworker that you have a relationship that you can vent with, and that you're very clear, I need a few minutes to vent. They don't try to solve my problem. They don't rally with me. They just allow me to vent versus gossiping. And so those, if you can set some clear guidelines around that and your team is all on the same page, this creates a nice psychological and cultural boundary. Right? It really is, someone is asking, how do you set those type of limits around venting and gossip? It really is a buy-in and conversations and a support network that really does champion the benefits of venting versus gossiping. So it really is setting an example from the top as you lead your team, right? All right, next. Okay. And so these are some ideas. I think we also forget that there are physical ways we can set boundaries that make it even clearer. Some people need physical cues that we need to set a boundary. So me just saying, I'm not taking calls right now, or I'm working on an important project, it doesn't land on someone in a way that they acknowledge, oh, I shouldn't go bother Arlene. So having real communication and maybe even signs up on your door, but definitely communicating with your team is that when my door is open, I'm open for conversation. Come on in. When my door is closed, even if no one else is in there with me, I'm not open for conversation. Right? When I have my headphones on, that means I've taken a call or I'm in a meeting. That is a clear physical boundary. Do not come in. If they're out of my ears, come on in. Right? And then there are physical things we can use as things escalate that give us opportunity to regain our balance, keep ourselves safe. And that's something like moving a chair in between myself and the person who I've set a boundary with that is now escalating the situation. I may keep a book or a binder in my hand so that I have something in between us, right? Again, putting that sign on the door. When the door is closed, I'm not up for an interaction. It must be an emergency if you're going to knock on that door. And then, of course, always stepping away or choosing to stand up during a conversation. So stepping away allows us to have distance, okay? And choosing to stand up changes the tone of the conversation. So once I stand up, it gives me the ability to move, to fidget, to do whatever I need to do to better be prepared while I'm holding that boundary. Next. And so we shared some statistics. We shared some statistics in the beginning of the webinar about, highlighting the issues around the lack of boundary setting or the lack of clear boundaries. And these are some of the benefits. Establishing clear boundaries reduces workplace stress by 44%. 68% of employees with strong workplace boundaries report higher overall job satisfaction. 79% of executives now endorse formal boundary setting policies. And organizations that provide boundary setting training see a 35% reduction in employee burnout. So the benefits are there. We know that. We know that when we give people the tools to set healthy boundaries, the atmosphere, the culture, the team, the sense of team, the sense of support, it all benefits. So I'm going to move off this slide, next slide, but I want to take some questions first. Thank you, Lou. So before we go to a Q&A, so this is just a graphic that we wanted to show you that boundary setting doesn't happen on its own. Okay. You have to, we'll start with adrenaline management, right? You have to be grounded and you have to understand that if you are activated, if you have moved to orange, if you've moved to red, you may need to take some time before you set this boundary. One, it may come off in a way that will only escalate the situation, right? So make sure where you are at on the spectrum of awareness. Yeah. Okay. Right? Use assertive communication. So make sure you're using good body posture, good tone, you're making eye contact, right? All those things are important in how you're setting the boundary, right? You may have to use de-escalation skills, so remain calm and be strong in those to when you protect your boundary, when you're standing to your boundary, right? Then be reflective. I think someone shared in the chat that, there was some preparation that needed to be made. So have some internal preparation and reflection on how you're going to set this boundary. Okay. And then also self-regulation, understanding where your emotions. When we set boundaries, we've usually hit a point that we've kind of hit our limit. So when we're setting this boundary, we have to understand that we may need to keep ourselves grounded. We may need to breathe. We may need to take care of ourselves in a way that our boundary stays strong. So all of these things work together. It's not just one, right? Okay. So I'd like to move off and take some questions from the chat. If anyone from my team has seen something, because I cannot watch the chat while I'm presenting. So if you'd like to share some of them, comments or questions. If someone would just like to unmute and share a comment or question.
All right.
Arlene, this is Fede. I have copied all the questions from all the people until now in the chat. So if you open it, you have a list of all the questions collected until now.
Super. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. All right. How do you enforce venting versus gossiping? I think I did touch a little bit on that. I think it comes from the leadership and, one, letting know that people can vent. It is allowed. Find someone in a safe space within your team or maybe someone at home, right, that you vent with that will help you reshape how you're processing that. And then, of course, having meaningful conversations when gossip is creeping in. Like, hey, did that serve us well? If you had a chance to do it a different way, would you? So, finding ways where they can be teaching moments.
Arlene, I'd offer, yes. It's Heather here, I'd offer that, in the experience of organizations that I've worked with, public, private, NGOs, frustration often comes with the lack of good behavioral examples associated with policies. You may not agree with the policy, but if it's very clear, and many of us are given these policies as part of our onboarding, and that should even be a clue in the interview process to understand and ask about what are the policies that guide your diversity, equity, and inclusion, for example. So you get a bit of a read on how it's like around here when things come up and there are challenges according to inter-colleague, patron, library worker challenges and so on and so forth. Sadly, the only time we only refer to boundaries is when there's a challenge associated or an absence of them. And then people go looking for and sometimes get frustrated by an absence, and then they proceed to make things up, which is sort of an informal boundary, which escalates things. So if you ask some questions about what's the culture like around here when something like this happens, or how is this typically resolved in the organization, so I get a feel for what it's like to work around here, then that is kind of an informal declaration of the boundary and that it's reinforced, and that there's a consultation process from time to time, particularly with leadership and the union around, do we need to update this policy because we've had some challenges that kind of don't address the current policy, and that really need to be updated according to what's happening, politically, socioeconomically in our community. All these things should be reviewed, and they should be part of the living, breathing documents of an organization and their effectiveness overall.
Yes, thank you, Heather. Thanks. Definitely, I think there is a shortage of using those organizational boundaries, Heather. It comes up quite often in our training, like, yes, I didn't, now you're reminding me, I can use that. I can say that. That's the policy. I can use that. So definitely a reminder of an organizational boundary, policies, procedures, and when those fall short, then a discussion about that on how can we tighten that? How can we change that? How can we update that? Absolutely. Thank you, Heather. I think we have some people on this call from Canada. Heather is our PAVE Canada manager in Canada. So thanks for chiming in, Heather. Any other questions? There was a question that came up in the chat about when I'm in a cubicle, I can't close my door, I can't do things like that. I think that, maybe the use of some good headphones as to set a physical boundary for yourself when you don't want to be interrupted, or maybe some type of signage on there that says, when this sign is up, please do not cross my boundary, or, you can give more information on that if you'd like. When this sign is up, when my headphones are on, I'm unreachable, or please send me a text instead, or don't interrupt me, or, however you'd like, whatever works for you in your place of work. But I think there are still ways, even in a cubicle, where you can communicate a boundary that if this is happening at this time, I need this to happen. Okay. Someone said it was helpful because they use headphones, but make sure, sometimes those headphones are so small, people don't even realize that they're in. So, I don't want anyone to go out and have to buy a couple different pairs of headphones, but, something that makes it clear that they know that is a boundary for you.
Arlene, the next question is there a place to see formal boundary policies examples?
We might have some from clients that we've worked with that we can pull out some things. I don't have anything right now to share, but we may be able to pull some things together. It gives me an opportunity to share that at the end of this webinar, there will be a link to a Discord for the next couple weeks where we can keep this conversation going. And so someone on this webinar may have an example of those boundary setting policies that we may share together. And I think we have some from some current clients that we're working with that we might be able to share. But there will be a conversation that continues after this webinar for the next couple weeks. Elena has posted some comprehensive framework, so great. Any other questions?
Yes, next question is, what if it is a supervisor or a manager that has built a wall and refuses to listen to reason?
So my first question when I hear this, the information that I would need to know is there a policy that they're breaking when they're asking to push this boundary? Is there something in policy and procedure that allows me to say, hey, I'm not going to do this, or I'm not able to do this? So checking in on that first. And then, going to HR, setting your boundary, explaining that to HR, this boundary is being pushed. These are the times that it's happened. Boom, boom, boom. So there's still, even though it's your boss, even though it's your supervisor, there still are policies and procedures to protect you when you set that boundary.
Great. Next question is, what tips can you give for someone who continues to set boundaries or is professional, but the other person continues to make comment when the two people are alone? It can be a very he said, she said situation, especially when supervisors and HR gets involved.
So you're setting boundaries and they're respected in group setting, but one-on-one, they're not being respected. One, I would ask that you try to, file your report, follow your policies and procedures. Even if it means a he said, she said situation, or they said, I would encourage you to still follow through with your reporting. And then, be aware of your situational awareness, which is a whole additional chapter in our training. But be aware of your situational awareness. I don't want you to move through your life fearful of interactions, but be mindful of where you're at. Be mindful of where you're at and limit those interactions. Limit those interactions for your own well-being, not because you're, somehow responding and accepting poor behavior, but for your own well-being. Be mindful of those interactions, but pursue your policies and procedures around that type of behavior. If this person is a bad actor, there are probably other people in your organization that have said the same thing.
Thank you, Arlene. Next question is, what about an oversharer? How does one try to get the conversation moving without sounding dismissive?
Yeah. Throughout our trainings, even, we have people that really feel like they need to share some really important things, and they are really important to them. So first and foremost, I would encourage you and challenge you to try to make time for that individual one-on-one. So give that person the time to be heard. That would be one. And then have some guidelines within your meetings, within your team on, we each only have 5 minutes to speak. We each only have 3 minutes to speak. Or, respectfully asking, can I put this in our parking lot? Or can I put this, somewhere that we can come back to it? And then you have to follow up and come back to it. You have to still give them their time to be heard. But those type of team kind of boundaries, they work well. And people acknowledge them as long as you're consistent. So, we all have 5 minutes to speak. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there. Can I put that in the parking lot? And we will get to it if we have time at the end of the meeting, or I can touch base with you after the meeting or after the interaction.
Ouch.
Great. We have 3 more questions. What if a coworker sets boundaries that infringes into everyone else's boundaries? And the examples they gave is one person wants lights off in the office and the other want them on. They ask us to give them at least a foot or more around them, but our workspace is tight. So these are some examples they post in the chat.
Well, my first thought on this is, kind of a vote, right? Like if 9 out of the 10 people would like the lights on, then, I would say then the lights are on, right? Maybe there also could be a compromise of on Mondays, that's the day when the lights are dimmed. But the rest of the week, the lights are going to have to be on, or 1 hour a day, the lights are dimmed. I think there's some workarounds that, but there do have to be some team boundaries that promote the benefit and the well-being of the team.
Thank you. And what to do if your coworker is telling you things on purpose because they are aware that this bothers you?
Harassment.
Wow. I would say ground yourself. Find a way to move that out of your system quickly, and not let them have that impact on you. But in addition to that, set a firm boundary. I'm not okay hearing that. What are you trying to achieve by sharing that with me? What is your goal? Right? So there are some things that you can do to protect yourself in that, in addition to being a duck, right? And letting it roll off.
Next question is, what about when they need more time to be heard one-on-one that you can reasonably give?
Yeah. I mean, I think every single person has had that interaction, right? Whether that be with a family member or a coworker, where we don't have the time to give them what they need. And we just have to do the best that we can to set a boundary. I cannot do this right now, but in an hour, tomorrow, if you put it in writing, I promise to respond. I mean, there are all, it may not solve the problem, but in that moment, that is the best we can do to move and take care of everything else that's pending that day or in that moment.
And last question we have is, what I find that is exhausting is that I have my work boundaries. I've mentioned the violation, but I find myself creating ways to ensure my boundary stays firm. Should I not be creating a way to enforce my boundary?
I'm not quite following. If you are setting boundaries and you feel you're standing firm in them, and I think our boundaries are always going to be pushed and tested. It's human nature. We've all pushed someone's boundaries. So as long as we are standing firm when we've set our boundary, and it doesn't escalate to a point where it's having a negative impact on us, then be happy that you've set that boundary and it's holding, right? So yeah, I wouldn't be upset that I'm having to set boundaries and they're working.
And this is it for the questions.
Thank you. Thank you all. I had a blast actually doing this webinar. I do wonder if interactions virtually have meaning and have value. So this felt very good for me, interacting with you all. We do have one more slide that will allow you to connect with us on a Discord to keep this conversation going. So please connect yourself there. And we welcome this conversation to keep on going. There are other professionals, other PAVE professionals on this call that I'm sure have 10,000 things that they want to share with you as well. So please, they will be connected on Discord and sharing ideas as well. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you next quarter.